So, Larry Elder Destroys the Breakfast Club, Part 5, coming right up. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Common Sense Logic Reason. And as always, I want to say thank y'all for joining me today. So I got Part 5 of the Larry Elder Destroys the Breakfast Club. Now, I know I said that Part 4 was going to be my last segment, but I decided to finish up this interview because there was only one more segment left. And the real reason why I'm doing this, though, is for the receipts. You know, I always say that black people are brainwashed in America. And that's American blacks are absolutely, completely, and totally brainwashed. And I like to have the evidence and the data to back up what I'm saying, because anytime I would say this, black folk would disagree. But we'll constantly give you the evidence and the proof that so many blacks are brainwashed in America. And this interview is absolute, hands down, some of the greatest evidence that you could find of how brainwashed black people are based upon of narratives and nonsense that they know nothing about, but stuff that they speak on. But anyway, so let's get back to this interview to really finish it up.
A white guy come in here and tell you have to say, think a certain kind of way, otherwise you, quote, ain't black? Wow.
How should I have replied to him, you think?
What not black? 20% of black people, black men, as I said, voted for Donald Trump in 2020. Are they not black now? So only 80% of black people, black men walking around are really black, 20% are not because they voted for Donald Trump? How insulting is that? How condescending is that?
I mean, you're probably right, but I didn't take it in that way.
Well, I did.
Well, I guess as a black man, that I can think for myself, that I don't need anyone telling me that what party that I need to be vote for, that I have to vote for black people. I mean, I have to vote for Democrats, or I'm not black. I mean, I guess that's what I would say. But then again, that's a problem. Far too many black people aren't thinking for themselves. They're just operating based upon, again, that brainwashing programming that they were indoctrinated to as growing up. But I would say that what would you say if would Donald Trump say grab him by the P word, something that they brought up? I mean, he responded to that. Right? He was more offended by that than him being told that he has to vote a certain way as a black man. And the difference is that Trump did not go into Walmart and get on the intercom system and shout, grab him by the pussy. He was recorded in secret. But it amazes me how that didn't offend Charlemagne and other black people compared to all the things that black people get offended by. That right there is the real part that's laughable.
Black person, it blew my mind.
As a person objectively who doesn't care about either party, when I just take a step back and I just look at everything that's happening, I see one party that seems still committed to democracy somewhat, and one party who's headed fast towards fascism.
Again, Charlemagne has no clue what fascism is. I hope he goes up and look up the definition of fascism. I think Larry Elder did give him a good explanation for what it is, but he doesn't know what fascism is. Most of these mindless people on the left doesn't know what fascism is. They heard some Democratic candidate cry fascism, because you know the Democrats love their narratives. They all picked up on it and they just keep repeating on it. They don't know what fascism is. I mean, the Republican Party is as far from, they're not fascists. There's nothing fascist about the Republican Party. Fascists use violence to push their political narrative. The Republicans don't fight for a damn thing. One of my biggest problems of the Republican Party is that they don't fight for anything. And one of the reasons why we've gone so far left, for instance, the Democrats want to let all these illegal aliens in because they know that these illegal aliens are more likely going to vote for Democrats, even though they shouldn't be voting in the first place. But if the people, if they're much more likely to vote for Democrats, giving them more votes, that's why they allowed the illegal aliens in the country. If illegal aliens were voting Republicans, we would have had a wall up decades ago. And that's how the Democrats fight. So the Democrats are more fascist than anything the Republicans have ever exhibited.
Yeah, but it's not just election denying. It's the disdain of women and fear of non-standard gender identities and sexual orientation.
Disdain
it's
for
the
women.
galvanizing of popular rage against cultural elites. It's nationalism based on dominant, superior race and historic bloodlines. Like, there's a lot of things that Republicans are doing.
Well, what about
You never let a leftist run on with a whole bunch of rhetorical nonsense, because they will run on with it, especially like race hustle rhetoric. If you ask a black person, well, where's the evidence of how America is so racist? They're going to just throw out all the examples of race hustle rhetoric that they've been brainwashed with that they can't explain. So you never let them run on. What you do is you deal with one example at a time. So if you never let them just run off, because and if you get them to try to explain each one of them, their arguments are just going to fall apart in front of you. But Donald Trump has never shown no damn disdain for women, nor the rest of this nonsense that Charlemagne said. This is how easy it is to brainwash people into narratives, leftists, because their whole argument is all about being indoctrinated into a narrative. Somebody speaks a narrative and they all pick it up, parrot it, and repeat it. None of that nonsense Charlemagne can even explain. He's just repeating bullshit that he heard. Jesus.
in slavery?
So why should black people rock with the GOP then? Like, what are the reasons?
Well, as Trump said, what do we have to lose as black people? I mean, we've been rocking with Democrats for decades now, and what has it gotten us? Black people, we've gotten progressively worse societally as we start rocking with the Democratic Party, and yet you still want to keep voting for these people? I mean, at least one thing you can say for the Republican parties is that, they love to cry about system, but if the system is so bad, Republicans tend to want to limit the system, or make the government smaller, while Democrats usually want to increase the system, and of course a system that they control and they keep people under their control. So why in the world would black people keep rocking with Democrats is the question. But once again, just go to show you how brainwashed black people can get. And people in general can get this brainwashed. But usually people who think find themselves on the right, and people who don't find themselves on the left. Clearly with Charlemagne.
Well, just a simple question. Have the Republicans done anything that you disagree with? Just out of curiosity.
They spend.
My only real knock on the Democrats is that they don't fight for nothing. I mean, the Democratic Party, they will fight to the end, to the last man. They'll go kamikaze on you, and they don't care how dirty or how low they have to do to go. They don't care what kind of lie they have to tell to fight. They're going to fight. Republicans don't fight for nothing. And as I said earlier, this is the reason why we have open borders, because Republican parties aren't fighting and saying enough. This is the reason why this whole nonsense went on with Donald Trump, quote unquote, it was the election and being sued in Georgia, because the Republicans don't fight for nothing. They don't fight for anything, and the Democrats will gouge your eyes out, stab you in the back if they got to fight. And you don't have to fight dirty to fight. That's the thing. But you can fight and honorably. There's nothing wrong with fighting and defending with an honorable fight. But they just don't do anything, and they're just way too passive on leftism and wokeism, and this is why it's got the spread. So that's why this is my only knock on the Democratic Party. They just need to fight more, and if they did, a lot of this wokeism and moving toward left wouldn't happen.
Okay. I do want to ask you one final question. When do you think systemic racism ended? Since you said it don't exist anymore, when did it end?
Well, I'm not talking about voting, sir. I'm talking about, and just to be fair, I think Joe Biden and what Joe Biden has did to African Americans, particularly with the war on drugs, was one of the worst things that actually happened to Black people. Just to put that on the record, he too was a part of that system that I'm talking about. Democrats as well. I just try to stay balanced to say that same system applies on both sides. Democrats and Republicans helped with mass incarceration. Joe Biden led it, wrote it.
So systematic racism ended when Black people were free to do or achieve whatever it is that they want without any laws holding them back from doing anything. For instance, laws that will discourage Black people from being lawyers or doctors. Now, when did this act exactly happen? Who's to say? I'm more concerned about the fact that it is happening today. So as Black people, we can waste our time and energy trying to figure out when did the system end, or we can just participate in said system that a Black person are completely free to do so. I would rather Black people stop wasting time on nonsense. Let's focus on what's relevant. Now, as far as tassing with this, the Republicans and the Democrats both helped in mass incarceration. Nobody helped more about mass incarceration than Black people. Black people were the biggest participants in the mass incarceration of Black people, because as I keep saying, you don't commit mass crime, you don't have mass incarceration. And this is a perfect example of people focusing on the end, again, the repercussion and not the reason why we got there in the first place. This is a problem that's all too prevalent of Black people. One of the numerous reasons why as Black people we will never get anywhere in this country, because we're too busy focused on nonsense. We worried about the end result, but we never want to worry about how we got there so we can stop the end result. Again, the solution and the why is in how we got there in the first place. All they ever want to do is focus on that we're there and not how we got there. Other than to assume that it was because of racism.
Well, when I'm talking about mass incarceration, I'm not talking about violent crimes. I'm talking about non-violent crimes, particularly the war on drugs. I was very clear in what I said. Sure, but that wasn't what I was talking about. I was very clear when I talked about Joe Biden writing the crime bill and mass incarceration with war on drugs to non-violent offenders. So that's a...
And once again, this is an example of leftists or Black people just running on a whole bunch of nonsense. Crime bill, mass incarceration, war on drugs, non-violent offenders and all that. You again, what you always want to do with these leftists is that you want to deal with each one of these cases, these examples individually. You don't let them just run off and start throwing stuff, because this is how they feel that they're making points. And as you can see here, what she said made absolutely no sense. And what she's doing is she's talking faster than she can actually think. And she's trying to talk fast like she thinks she's Ben Shapiro. But Ben Shapiro talks fast. He actually processes what he's saying, as opposed to what she is. She's not processing anything. She's just repeating nonsense. And still probably thinking that she's intelligent, sounding intelligent, but she's really sounding like an idiot. And she doesn't really realize how stupid she's sounding. But again, what's the cure for all of these things? Stop committing crime. End of story.
Okay.
Well, in order for you to go to jail, you have to commit a crime. If you walk down the street,
not always when you're Black in America.
Well, where are the...
Once again, based on what? Like, what percentage of Black people are arrested for walking down the street? He has no clue of this. He has no data, real data. Like, what percentage of Black people are behind bars wrongfully? And by the way, anybody who's behind bars and in jail for something they commit is wrong, and they should be freed. But that's not act as if this is some major problem in the Black community, that the prisons is full of Black people being committed or being convicted for something that they didn't do. Are there Black people in there who are in jail for something they didn't do? Sure, but let's not act as if this is the norm. That's the rule. No, that's the exception. The majority of people who are behind bars are there because of the crimes that they committed. Once again, they could easily rectify this by stop committing crime. More nonsense that blacks are brainwashed with. Again, y'all starting to see the pattern of brainwashing and repeating a bunch of nonsense that they have no clue what the hell they're talking about.
And I criticized them as well, went on record, because actually you're right. He lied and said that he was going to fix the crack cocaine disparity. So I went on record, you're right. And guess what? Guess who he works for? The system. So he's just a blackface that works for the system at the time. So again, we just disagree on systems and institutions versus black faces in high places.
Well, the disparity has been rectified. Now you go to jail for dealing powder as you do for dealing crack. And at one time,
the reason why crack cocaine was dealt with more harshly than powder cocaine and the other drugs was because crack hit the black community like a freight train. And again, crack wasn't the problem. What crack did was expose a problem in the black community, or the problem with blacks. So it wasn't the problem. But crack was far more addictive than powder cocaine and a lot of other drugs. It was cheaper. It was, again, we know that is a derivative of cocaine, but it was cheaper than cocaine. It spread wider than cocaine. It had a greater effect than cocaine. That's why it was dealt with more harshly. And of course, the Congressional Black Caucus spearheaded a lot of this, and they were all for it. Now we want to act like black people didn't support all the crime bills and the war on drugs. We act like black people didn't support this war on drugs. They were behind it and spearheading a lot of it. But crack cocaine was dealt with more harshly because of this. Not because of it was more likely to be used by blacks, or blacks dealt with crack cocaine more than powder cocaine, so that we're going to deal with it more harshly. No, because of the impact it had upon society. But now there's parity in sentencing. So what did they complain about? They still complain about stuff that happened in the 1980s that's no longer exists anymore.
And I was talking about a very clear category, and I gave you, I told you where I just criticized the black man who was in charge, and you skipped over that and went right to talking about drunk driving.
Larry.
So again, sir, I have no problem with criticizing black Democrats. We do that. Charlemagne does that all the time. It's just the imbalance of understanding that even black faces in high places, even including yours, and Democrats, Republicans, just being fair across the board. That's all.
Well, that to me basically is no different than what Joe Biden just did with Charlemagne, which is to tell me as a black person I got to think a certain kind of way, otherwise I'm not black.
And I didn't like that either.
Well, you just did.
I didn't like that either.
You just did. You call me a black face as if I'm supposed to think a certain kind of way.
No,
you just
I said
did.
blackface. I said blackface in high places. I said they're everywhere. You're a black face. You're in a high place. You're running for president of the United States. That's a high place. You are a black face, correct? I said so. There's
as opposed to black faces in low places. Well, black faces in low places, black faces in high places. What are those black faces stopping her from doing achieving? What are the white faces in those places stopping her from doing achieving? The answer to the question is absolutely nothing. So what does this even mean in the first place? And she's been crying about these white black faces in high places the whole damn interview, and none of it makes any sense. But anyway, I don't expect much intelligence from the Breakfast Club. I really don't. But then again, I don't expect extreme stupidity either. Now, like as I said, Charlemagne and DJ Envy were more cordial, even though we know that they were absolutely brainwashed. But that Tarzan chick, that broad's got to go. They need to get rid of her quick, because she's just gonna drag down the show, and all it's gonna do is just make people see them more for what they are. Because her mouth she just talks like she talks without thinking. One of those people that just run off at the mouth and talks without thinking. And it's common when you see a lot of black females. A lot of these black females that get themselves in situations because of their mouths, and then expect somebody to come to protect them. So the Breakfast Club really needs to get rid of her, because she drags the show down, and she makes all of them look foolish. She makes them look dumber than they probably actually are. When you add her mouth to them just repeating rhetorical nonsense. But anyway, like I say, I'm glad Larry Elder did this interview because he's getting his message out there. But he really exposed the Breakfast Club for who they really truly are. And what he did went a long way to help trying to wake black people up and get black people up from the nonsense. Getting black people out of this matrix that they seem to be in, this mental matrix of being brainwashed by the leftist agenda and leftist nonsense that we do to ourselves. We are brainwashed ourselves. We keep brainwashing the latest generation into being victims. So I really want to thank Larry Elder for doing this interview. And as I say now, this is my real sum up of this. I just thought I might as well go ahead and just finish it up because there was one last segment left, and there's more things that I really wanted to cover and highlight on stuff that was said here. A lot of information was covered in this interview, but first and foremost, this is how brainwashed black people are. Anyway, y'all, until next time.